Discover the latest health tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories. This is the Health Channel Podcast. Your journey to better health starts now.
You finally bring home that new puppy or kitten. The kids are all excited. The photos are posted. And then the next thing you know, you're in the pet emergency room. Today, we're breaking down what every new pet owner needs to know about pet proofing your home before the newest member of the family comes tearing through the door, as well as answer your other pet related questions on this episode of Ask the Doc, No Appointment Needed. Welcome to Ask the Doc, the show where we encourage our viewers to send in their health questions. I'm Dr. Joy Carter, a doctor of veterinary medicine, and today we're focusing on pet-proofing your home for kittens and puppies. All right, let's get started, guys. Our first question comes to us from Theo, who reached out to us through our website, allhealthtv.com. Hi, Dr. Carter. I just got a 10-week-old cockapoo puppy, and per the breeder's instructions, she has had her first set of vaccines. Can I take her outside to the dog park now? All right, Theo, this is a perfect question to start off the show. So the answer is no, okay? I'm going to assume that probably the puppy that you got is maybe somewhere around 6 to 10, maybe 6 to 12 weeks old, because that's usually around the time when they get their first puppy shot. At that time, they still have not built up a good immune response to what they were vaccinated for. So they are still susceptible to diseases like parvovirus, to distemper virus, things like that, which are the viruses that we are really concerned with in a lot of puppies that can be very deadly. I typically tell owners that usually after the third set of vaccines, so typically that's going to be around the time period of maybe around like 4 months old, maybe let's say 3 to 4 months old. That is when it is safe to be able to take them outside as far as and go to public places or places where there's going to be a lot of other dogs around. I know that's the first thing that everybody wants to do whenever they get a new puppy is they want to take it out and show it off. And that's okay, but you just have to be very careful. I definitely would not recommend any dog parks. I think it's better to have people come and see the puppy at the house. Now, if you have your own backyard, things like that, it is okay for your pet to play out outside. If you live in an area that has more of kind of like a public area where I guess other dogs, play and go to the bathroom, I definitely would keep them away from them. Okay. I know it sucks, Theo. All right. But I promise you the time is going to fly by really quickly. And trust me, it is a lot better to be safer than sorry as far as, exposing them too early when they haven't had their full set of vaccines yet. All right. All right. Our next question is from Sienna, who reached out to us through our Facebook page. Hi, Dr. Joy. My husband and I are finally ready to get a dog for our kids. But before we jump in, I want to make sure we're doing this the right way. What's the safest way to bring a new dog into our home and family? All right. Hi, Sienna. I love how proactive you guys are being. Most folks just bring the pet home and then ask the questions later. All right. So things that you need to do as far as bringing home a new dog or a new cat, especially if you have kids. And a lot of it depends on the age of the kids too, okay? But the big thing is you want to make sure that anytime the children are with the puppy, that it is supervised, especially if it is younger children, okay? Younger kids sometimes don't understand how rough they can be. I have a toddler myself. And thankfully, my cats are bigger and my dog, too, is older, so they know how to get away from her if she starts to mess with them. But sometimes she doesn't know any better that she's petting them too rough. Also, too, I mean, sometimes, puppies can get scared if they're, if they have like a children that's kind of chasing after them. And especially with maybe a more larger breed puppy or even with a smaller breed puppy, they could lash out even by trying to bite, or if it is a cat or a kitten, certainly scratching them. So always make sure that supervised or have supervised visits, okay, as far as with the parents. If you have a younger child, you don't want to just leave the puppy or the kitten just kind of in the same room as your child without having someone there watching them. I think another important thing is going to be crate training. Crate training is great for dogs. I highly recommend it, especially for puppies, because they can get into anything and everything. And especially if you have younger kids at home, kids, even though we teach them to try and clean up their mess and to put things up, they don't always do that. And there's a lot of things that can be dangerous to puppies, certainly toys for children that they could swallow and choke on, or could possibly cause like an obstruction, different types of food that could be toxic, medications, all those things that, the kids can get into or, possibly, expose a puppy to. So definitely want to make sure that you have them in a crate whenever you're not at home. Okay. Because you don't know what your son or your daughter might have accidentally knocked over, or what could be hiding underneath the bed or underneath the table or something like that you're not able to see. But the puppy is small enough that they're able to get up underneath there. So if you're not at home, definitely recommend a crate or a cage, or if you have like a very small room of the house that you can kind of block off, or even like a small bathroom. Just make sure when you leave, obviously, to check and make sure there's not anything harmful that your pet could get into. So all right, Sienna, hopefully that helps answer some of your questions. There's a lot of useful resources online. So definitely you can check out some other things too there. All right, we got another Facebook question, and it is from one of our loyal viewers. And this one is from Zeke. Hi, Doc. I got my eye on a sleek mini pincher. So I want to know, what are the most important things to do when pet proofing your home? Hi, Zeke. All right. I kind of addressed this question with Sienna. Like I mentioned before, obviously, if you have young children, make sure supervised playtime visits with them. Definitely a crate training again, because when you're not home, if you keep them in a crate or a cage, you know that they are safe in there. Whatever is in there, that's the only thing that, is in there, and they can't get exposed to anything else. Okay. Other things as far as pet proofing is just think about heavy objects on furniture that could be easily knocked over, or, things like mirrors or glass that could be easily toppled over that your pet could run into and it cause it to break. You definitely got to be careful for that. I certainly would make sure cleaning up underneath the couches, the tables, anything where a pet can get underneath, but you can't really necessarily get underneath, because you never know what can be hiding up underneath there, and you never know what your pet's going to get into. I definitely think that keeping plants, even though not all plants are harmful to pets, I think it is better in the beginning, especially when you have a dog or a cat that's kind of in that playful and chewing stage, is to keep plants out of the way. Okay. It's just better safe than sorry. Because also too, if you got them in a potted plant, if that falls over and breaks, that can be a hazard there too. Trying to think of other stuff really. That's really the big thing. Keep in mind, if you've ever kind of baby proofed a home, this should not be that hard. The only thing you got to think of is, remember, when you usually baby proof a home, when the baby comes home, they're not moving around too much, except for when they start crawling and walking. This puppy or kitten is going to be running around and crawling and walking and getting things from the get-go. All right. But I trust, Zeke, that you are smart and that you got this and you can do it. Okay. Our next question comes to us from Naya, who just visited us on Insta. Hi, Dr. Carter. My daughter wants a Siamese kitty, so I'd like to know about some of the core vaccines that she's going to need. Hi, Naya. This is a really good question. And I know I've kind of touched on this topic with some other episodes, but I'm fine to go over it again. Okay. So the typical core vaccines for your cats are going to be one that's called FVRCP. So that stands for feline virus rhinotracheitis, calicivirus, panleukopenia. Okay. So basically, as kind of like a four in one shot there. All right. Usually we start that vaccine when kittens are about 6 to 8 weeks old. That's typically when they receive the first vaccine. And then it is boosted about every 3 to 4 weeks after that, until they've received pretty much a set of 4 shots, or until they're about the age of 16 weeks old. Now, the other core vaccine that we give is rabies vaccine. And you guys all understand the importance of the rabies vaccine because unfortunately, if a pet contracts rabies or doesn't have the rabies vaccine and does contract rabies, that can be deadly. I've talked about this before, but rabies is required by law, at least in certain states. I'm pretty sure it's probably every state, but I just can't say that for sure. And it's also, not only is it protection for your pet, but it's protection for you legally. Okay. You don't know how many times, myself included, or even some of my technicians that work at my clinic, they have gotten bit by a cat or a dog that is not up to date on rabies vaccine. And if that is the case, we have to report that to the county. Okay. That doesn't mean the pet is going to be euthanized, but a lot of times that pet has to be quarantined for a time period of typically around 10 days. And that quarantine could be at home, or the county could require you to quarantine that pet at a breeding facility or boarding facility or at your veterinary office. And that costs money, and that is money that you are going to have to spend. And if you say you have a pet that's never been vaccinated for rabies, even if they're not showing signs of rabies, then unfortunately, it could be that that person might have to get the prophylactic shots for rabies. And that is something that they might be able to go back and, try and get money from you. Okay. These vaccines have been trusted. They have been out for a very long time period. There are minimal reactions to them. Okay. So do not be afraid. If you do have any concerns about vaccinating your pet, then certainly speak to your veterinarian. And I promise you, they're going to be able to answer your questions. All right. All right, Naya. All right. I wish you the best with your new Siamese kitty. Okay. All right. This question comes to us from Audrey, who reached out through YouTube. Hi, Dr. Joy. I just adopted a 5-year-old cat from the shelter. She's up to date with all her vaccines. So do I need to take her to the vet for a checkup after bringing her home? Hi, Audrey. Thanks for reaching out to us. This is a really good question. Okay. I definitely would recommend yes. Okay. Even if your cat probably just had a recent health check by a veterinarian who works at the shelter, I think it is good to go ahead and establish a relationship with the veterinarian that you're going to be taking your pet for preventative care, for accidents, for, sickness. And it's also a good idea maybe to even find out where is the closest emergency hospital and where you need to take your vet. And that's something that obviously your general practice veterinarian may have a hospital that they recommend or can give you some recommendations on places and things like that. Now, your pet probably will not need any shots. Maybe the vet's just going to do an overall health check, but I definitely do recommend doing it. Okay. It's just great to go ahead and get them established with a veterinarian and for you to get to know that veterinarian also, so you can feel more comfortable if there is a situation that arises that you feel like you need to bring your pet in for, and things like that. One thing I will say, and this also applies to not even just getting a pet, that's like adopted, but from, new, basically from a breeder, a new puppy or a new kitten from a breeder. If it is a legit breeder, okay, or pet shop, they're going to have something called a certificate of health that is included with the pet when you buy it. Basically, what that is saying is that the puppy or kitten was examined by a veterinarian just a short time period before that puppy or kitten was sold. And that typically they usually have to have a fecal done to check for intestinal parasites. Now, if any intestinal parasites are noted, that is fine. They usually will get dewormer treatment, and that is also noted on the health certificate. And then any vaccines that have been administered to that puppy or kitten are on that health certificate. Okay. It's basically kind of like it's a guarantee that, hey, listen, a vet checked this pet out and this pet seems, healthy enough to be sold. Now, there is something called pet lemon laws. I think it varies state by state, but basically it protects the buyer. Okay. When you buy a new puppy or kitten, even though you have that certificate of health, I have seen it so many times where puppies or kittens go home, they get stressed out, and they get sick very shortly after they are purchased. Okay. And you have a certain time period, and it varies by state. So you'll need to look that up to be able to bring your puppy or kitten in if you feel like they need to get checked out or if you feel like they're sick. All right. As far as what happens after that, I mean, unfortunately, I've seen cases where pet shops will agree to pay the bill if they're sick, which I guess that's not a bad thing. Or I guess say the bad thing would be that sometimes I've seen owners have to fight with the pet shop about that. Or either they will have a veterinarian that they used, to treat your pet. I have seen so many times cases of new puppies that were adopted, or I wouldn't say adopted, purchased, whatever you want to call it. And they have come down with pneumonia a few days after they have been brought home, parvovirus, which has an incubation period of anywhere from 10 to 14 days, which means they can be infected with it almost 2 weeks before they start showing clinical signs. And I've seen that happen. And I've seen, unfortunately, new pet parents just really distraught about what to do. Okay. So I always recommend, even if they have a certificate of health, within a few days time period after getting your new puppy or kitten, take them into the vet, have them checked out. Okay. That's just more protection for you in case the pet does get sick very quickly after you purchase him. All right. Hopefully it doesn't happen to you, but just want to let you guys know. All right. All right. This question comes to us from Audrey, who reached out through YouTube. Oh, actually, sorry, that was a question we just read. I'm so sorry about that, guys. All right. We have another question from our website, allhealthtv.com. And you guys should really go check it out when you get a chance because it's a lot of great information. All right, Oscar, let me get to your question now. I'm sorry about that. All right. Hi, Dr. Carter. My wife passed away a little over a year ago now, and I was feeling a little lonely. So I went to the pound and adopted a senior dog. Do you think I should get some pet insurance? I'm very sorry to hear about your wife, Oscar. And I do think it probably is maybe a good idea if you're feeling a little lonely, getting a pet is something that can help with that. And yes, I've preached this so many times, okay? Pet insurance is definitely a must. Obviously, it is a little bit less expensive whenever you have a younger pet, okay? It's just the same thing kind of with human insurance and life insurance and health insurance and things like that, because the younger you are, the less likely you are to have health problems. Same thing with dogs. But certainly, as you know, senior dogs can have problems, and they're going to be the ones that are more likely to have problems. And I definitely would recommend getting pet insurance, okay? Because I promise you, it will save you money in the future. Hopefully you don't need to use it very quickly, but I promise you there will be a situation, and hopefully it's not anything life-threatening, but there will be a situation that unfortunately your pet maybe is having some vomiting and diarrhea, and it's on a weekend when your regular vet is closed, and you have to go to the emergency hospital. And the emergency hospital, they're going to be, more expensive, unfortunately, than your regular veterinary practice. Okay. And so that is the time when you're going to be able to use that. All right, Oscar. So definitely, I'm sure you've got health insurance for yourself. So let's get it for your fur baby too. All right. We got another question from our Facebook page, and this one is from Ada. Hello, Doc. What are some early signs of stress in a new pet? All right, Ada. So I guess, this can be kind of a little bit of a hard question because every pet can act a little bit different. But I would say some of the big things that you start to see with a pet that is stressed out could be them hiding. Okay. Especially with cats. When you bring home a new cat into a new environment, a lot of times the first thing they're going to do is they're going to run away. They're going to run into a closet. They're going to run underneath the bed. They're going to try and hide anywhere they can to get away from you. Okay. And that is okay. You just need to be patient. Most of the time, once the cat starts to get used to you, all right, then they will kind of start to come out. So definitely hiding is one thing. And the same thing with dogs. Dogs may go into the corner and crouch. They may go into their kennel or their crate and kind of hang out in the back. somewhere that they feel kind of safe and protected. Another thing that can manifest as stress is definitely barking behavior, okay, or in cats, I guess, constantly meowing, and that obviously can be for different reasons, but definitely, separation anxiety is a big thing that we do see in dogs. And so if you have a pet you think is stressed out and is suffering from separation anxiety, big thing you want to do is talk to your veterinarian, okay? Because there are some things that you can do. And sometimes there are even some medications that kind of can help them calm down a little bit. Another thing I would say would be destructive behavior. All right. I know that some dogs are going to chew things up and some cats are going to get into things anyway, but definitely like really aggressive, destructive behavior. I'm talking about like chewing, the legs off a table. I've seen dogs where they've almost like broken their teeth off by trying to chew on the metal crate or the cage, scratching through a door, trying to chew through a wall. Anything like that can be indications of behavior of stress. Even some other signs like maybe decreased appetite, or even not wanting to eat at all could sometimes be a sign of stress. I've certainly seen that in pets before. When animals are stressed out, and even when we're stressed out, a lot of times we don't want to eat, or sometimes it can be the opposite in humans and could be the opposite in pets. Then you just want to eat everything in sight. But if you have any concerns, if you think your pet is stressed, the best thing to do is take your pet to the veterinarian, get them checked out, and speak with your vet about your concerns. Okay. All right, let's go to our next question, guys. I think this will be the last one. And this one comes to us from Jackson, who reached out to us on our Instagram page. Hi, Doc Joy. We've always been a dog family, but we just got our first cat. We know that dogs can't eat things like grapes, chocolate, and garlic. What are some things that are dangerous for cats? Hi, Jackson. All right. So this makes me so happy to see two species coexisting. All right. I love households that have dogs and cats like my house. All right. So a lot of the things that cats can be toxic to cats are the same things that are toxic to dogs. Okay. One thing in particular that with cats is acetaminophen, or basically Tylenol. That is very toxic to cats. It actually can cause liver damage and it can damage red blood cells, which that in and of itself can be life-threatening. Obviously, a lot of you guys know about plants. The most important one that I would say is lilies. Lilies are very toxic to the kidneys, and certainly that can be deadly also. So definitely want to be careful with those types of plants. Other thing is chocolate. I mean, it seems stupid. Cats wouldn't eat chocolate. They don't like chocolate, but that's not the truth. I have seen cats eat chocolate. I have seen cats eat grapes. And just like how they're toxic to dogs, they can be toxic to cats also. Okay. Typically, signs of chocolate toxicity, everybody kind of knows. You could definitely have some vomiting, some diarrhea. You can have some agitation, some excitement. And then worst case scenario, they can start to have like arrhythmias in the heart. And sometimes they can even start to have neurological signs like seizures. And that would be with extremely high doses or with kind of very concentrated chocolate, like dark chocolate or cocoa powder and things like that. Same thing with grapes. Grapes cause issues with the kidneys in dogs. Same thing in cats. Okay. And obviously raisins, okay, because raisins are dried up grapes. Other thing is definitely onions and garlics, okay? You got to be careful with that in cats. Cats will try and eat that. I have seen it, even though it seems like they would be smart enough not to. But trust me, they're not always. And the same thing, it can cause issues with the red blood cells, which can basically, lead to anemia and stuff. All right. I think this is probably going to be my last question for the day, but so let me kind of go back and recap some things. All right. So whenever you guys are getting a new pet, whether it is an adult dog, adult cat, a senior dog, a senior cat, or a puppy or kitten, the number one thing you guys want to do is go ahead and establish a relationship with your veterinarian, okay? Make that appointment within the first week of getting the pet. Just have your vet check them out. And then also, like I said, get information about emergency rooms that are close by. Hopefully you never have to use it, guys. But I promise you, when an emergency comes up, that is going to be the last thing on your mind is trying to Google, to get on MapQuest, whatever, and try and find out where the veterinarian, is, the emergency hospital is. You want to have that information at your fingertips and you want to know where you have to go. All right. The other thing is going to be pet insurance. Doesn't matter, old or young. pet insurance, I definitely recommend. I hope that you don't have to use it for anything major or life threatening, but definitely even small emergencies, okay, can cost quite a bit of money at emergency hospitals or at urgent cares or after hour places. So definitely, I promise you, you're going to save some money by having pet insurance. And the other big thing is definitely if you have younger children, you're bringing a new pet home, make sure that the visits are only supervised, okay? You don't know how many times I've seen a pet come in with a broken leg or something like that because the kids accidentally stepped on them or pulled on the leg too hard. And they didn't mean to hurt them, all right? So, all right, guys, I think that's going to be it for today. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you guys next time when I'm back. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Health Channel podcast. We hope this information has been useful. However, please remember that only your doctor can advise you about what is best for you. Do not start, modify, or suspend treatment based on anything you have heard on this podcast. Please join us again soon.